Amy, it's such a pleasure to be at the Power of Purpose with you.
My pleasure to be
I'll be
here.
playing a little bit the journalist role, but first want to get your story out. So for
Sure.
people who don't know what TOMS is and what TOMS has done and what TOMS truly innovated, fill us in.
Yeah. So TOMS is in business to improve lives. That is our mission statement and has been from day one. Our founder, through a variety of different activities, was in Argentina. He saw that people did not have what they needed, specifically shoes. And like most of us would most of us would think we would come home and get our friends to donate their shoes and we'd send some over. And he realized that that was not a very sustainable way of going about giving back in a community that he didn't know very well or understand. And so he decided that he would start making a very popular shoe in Argentina called the Alpargata. And for each pair of those we sold in the US that was getting quite to be a popular shoe, he would give a pair. And that was sort of the beginning of One for One. And I think we see it ubiquitously now across so many companies. And kind of the big...
One for one meaning offering shoppers
Correct.
buy one of these products, another one will be donated.
We will be given. Yep, one will be given, exactly. So the idea of One for Ones started with TOMS, but it has become so prevalent in so many purpose-driven companies today. And so we started with shoes. We went on to eyewear and gave sight. And then we went on to a coffee business and gave water. So we sort of kept growing, and then we needed to scale back a little bit. We had a bag and purse line for a while that gave safe birth. And so we kind of on and on in the one-for-one model for many, many years.
And who else has modeled themselves after your one-for-one model? What do some other companies do?
There are quite a few. A couple that come top of mind. One Hope Wine. They consider themselves a one-for-one company, but when you buy a bottle of wine, they give a percentage of the sales to an organization of your choosing as the consumer. There's also some soap companies that do one-for-one, and so there's lots of them out there. I will say that I feel like the evolution of one-for-one is also kind of happening, where it's driven kind of from what's authentic to the company and what's that purpose that makes sense with what they're doing, whether it's one-for-one or not.
So logistically, how did this work? Obviously, somebody's keeping track of the purchase, but then what shoes and how did the shoes get to what places around the world?
Yeah, great question. So the very first time that shoes were given, our founder, his friends and family got on a plane with some shoes and flew to Argentina and started handing them out on the back of a truck. Not best practices in international development, but what we knew to do. Since then, we have a giving department at TOMS. I'm very fortunate to have 10 people on my team that manage about 90 giving partners. So we work very closely with giving partners, and they are the ones on the ground that understand what these local communities need, where the schools that have the greatest need are. And so we give through these giving partners now. We manage those relationships through my department and really make sure that not only are they using the shoes effectively, but that they're integrating them into their existing programs. We're not just handing out shoes. We're using shoes as incentive or as other ways to engage people, maybe complete a school uniform so someone can go to school. So we have 4 silhouettes of shoes that we give. If you buy these boots, we do not give these boots. But we do give a shoe that the giving partner selects. We have a canvas shoe, we have a wet weather shoe, we have a school shoe, and then we also have an athletic shoe. So depending on the type of activity, depending on what that partner needs, depending on the time of year that they're giving it, we align their needs with that product and make sure that what we're giving them is the most valuable to them.
So what was the theory of giving a shoe? Obviously, it addresses shoelessness, which your founder observed.
Correct.
Why the shoe? At that point, he was not in the shoe business. So was there a theory that that particular item would have some other repercussions?
I don't know if Blake had a theory about that when he began. We would have to ask him that. What I do know is that he was quite aware that sustainable giving and sustainable change in the world was not going to happen through gathering donations from friends, and that people really cared about what was happening in the world. And so providing them a way to give back through a purchase or through something they wanted was a really powerful way to kind of get that ball rolling.
I want to come back to that question, though. Was there some hope ultimately, as time went on, that putting shoes on people's feet would expand their opportunity to travel, to go places, to go to school?
Yeah, definitely.
Weather the weather. I mean.
Yeah. What we've learned in the 13 years since we've been giving shoes is that all of our giving partners they send us an annual report. How many shoes have they given? How many have they received? Where are they storing them? How are they using them? How are they integrated into their programming? All of this comes back to us on an annual basis. And there are top 3 things that every single time we get a report back, they say physical safety. So we have less injuries, we have less disease that happen by someone having a shoe to wear and navigate the terrain that they live in. They also say that it builds child self-confidence to have something brand new that is well-fitting and activity appropriate is something that many of them have never experienced. So although we may have been addressing shoelessness in the beginning, we are not giving someone their first pair of shoes any longer. We might be giving them their first pair of new shoes that is activity appropriate and right-sized for them.
Why kids? Adults need shoes too.
Yeah, it's true. I think we just started with kids because that was a connection that Blake saw when he was in Argentina. He saw children without shoes running around. We also knew that we could have great impact in the education system. So in many countries, you have to wear a school uniform. And so if you do not have a completed school uniform, which includes shoes, you're not allowed to attend school. So there were many stories of children, 2 brothers that would share a single pair of shoes and go to school every other day. And so those were some of the ways that we were able to address the needs of children that impacted their family also in a positive way. So there's been a lot of controversy about whether or not TOMS or any other company that's giving is somehow negatively impacting a local economy, right? We're taking away dollars that
from the local shoe producer,
from a local shoe manufacturer, or cobbler, or whatever.
You've studied that, though.
We have. We've studied that at length, and the work that we did in a singular study. And I think we're always wanting to learn more and hear the feedback of people who are interested in, like, does this work? Does this not work? Is that the impact of the amount of shoes we were giving in any singular community was not having a negative impact on the community or any business there.
Was it clearly having a demonstrable positive impact in a significant way?
We think so. We certainly think so. We've not done a study on that side of like where have we seen great impact. However, we know that more children are going to school in these communities. We know that there is less burden on a family financially for this particular piece of it. And we know that and have seen in the reporting back from our giving partners that the emotional well-being of these children that are getting shoes is very positive.
TOMS then, though, went through this period of looking hard at what you were doing and saying we need to change. So what was that process? And what about what you just discussed needed to change?
Yeah, so, I joined TOMS about 3.5 years ago and was really just sort of awestruck at the level of giving that TOMS has chosen to do. So the model is very generous. And so, the first question I asked as the leader of this team is, are we doing as much as we can with the unprecedented giving that our consumers are enabling? And so that question went to our founder first, like, hey, are there any sacred cows? Should we not even be exploring this? Is this a done deal? And he's incredibly self-aware and said, no, let's, look, if we think there's something else we should be doing, let's explore that. We explored that for a good year, kind of exploring different areas and saying, maybe we should do this or maybe we should do that. Many rabbit holes did we go down and come back up. And really kind of got to a place of saying, Well, we know what we're doing is good. We know that, however, the world around us is changing. We know that the issues facing our communities are evolving. We know that people want to have an impact in their backyard. We know that the consumer is savvier than ever and is voting with their wallet every single day. And so the combination of all those things kind of put together, we said, look, we want to continue to give shoes, sight, and water, but we believe that if we add an element of the opportunity to give an impact grant in a community to a particular issue area that we know we can have meaningful impact in and resonates for our consumer, we should open the model enough that allows us to do that.
That would allow you to do what more than you were doing before?
Correct. So give direct grants to organizations. So if a shoe doesn't make sense in a particular instance, or they're not able to store the shoes or give the shoes effectively, right? We say a shoe's not given till it's on a child's foot. And there's so many things that happen between the point that we take that order to it being on the child's foot.
So by giving grants, you were looking to make the best of the expertise of organizations that were actually doing this work.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And to make sure that what we were doing was feeling modern and really important to our consumer. We are a for-profit business, and so we need to, and I think as purpose and profit companies, we should not shy away from that. We need to ensure that we can have a sustainable impact and still sustain the business itself.
So there's a question that exudes so much cynicism on my part.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering is it something, do you hear only from journalists, or are folks out there doing it? Because it assumes a cynicism on the part of the company that essentially a business model is built around making people feel good about doing a somewhat token transaction that they can later feel good about. And that it's a business model that depends on the continued poverty of a lot of people out there. Although I understand the stated goal would be to alleviate that poverty, but it's sort of saying, it's kind of the poster child type of mentality. Feel good about yourself by buying these shoes. And if there were no poor people out there, this business model wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But I just want you to take that on, the cynical question is, are you doing something cynical?
I don't think so. I wouldn't work there if I did. I do think there's some of that out there. I don't know that it's actually intentional. I think that you have to figure out what is authentic to your organization. We have a history of that from day one. You have to figure out where you can have credibility. And really, you have to surround yourself with the experts. We are not the experts and never will be. I think our choice to go to these nonprofit organizations that have deep expertise in these issue areas and support them in what they need versus saying, hey, we got some shoes. You want some? We've designed these shoes in partnership with these organizations. They have told us this is how we want to use them. This is how we want to order them. We treat these giving partners like customers, which I think is what we should do. They order on the time frame they want. They order the style that they want. They receive it when they need it the most. It goes to the schools that they indicate. We don't say, well, we really like the school over here a little better. We'll get a better, camera angle on whatever picture we're taking. It's really not that for us. Do we want to tell a story about our impact? Yes. But I think first priority is ensuring that there's impact. Second priority is ensuring that we share the story out there. I understand the skepticism, and I do think that we're still learning. We're still learning how to have the greatest impact.
It also seems to have depended in a few cases on the whim of your CEO. The first discovery, these kids need shoes, that's what the business I'm going to set up. And then the idea of going to grants, you had to appeal to him, one person, to make this decision to do this kind of help in the world. Is that problematic?
I don't know that the second was driven necessarily by our founder. I think that we did our homework to say, here's the impact we're having with shoes. Here's a way we want to evolve. Here's why we think we can have great impact in this area. So just to separate those things a little bit, I think it can be problematic if you have a founder that says, look, I have the right answer, this is what we should do, we are lucky to not have that situation. We're lucky to have a founder that is very self-aware, that is very driven to do what is best for our giving partners. We talk about our giving partners, we lift them up, we tell their story. We try to be the conduit between a consumer's desire to do something meaningful and the true need of an organization. And that's hard work.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I think some organizations that have a singular person in a CSR department have 10 people working on that question every single day.
In just a few minutes, I want to go to you for questions. And again, you can use the Slido device, and Amy's happy to answer any questions you want to put forth on this topic, and I'll keep an eye out for those. So another new direction that TOMS is taking, which is quite dramatic,
Yep.
is taking a stand on the issue of gun violence.
Right.
Now, I do think that there's a CEO whim in this story, so I'll let you tell it.
Okay, great. So yes, as part of this whole process to say we should be doing, we think there's an opportunity to do more than just giving shoe, sight, and water, that we should be exploring this impact grant thing. We've been doing that for about a year, and we've been doing it with our founder and with several others on my team and with some folks in the marketing department. So he's very actively involved in that process. And so we were moving toward that when the Thousand Oaks shooting happened. And so,
Can you remind people? I mean,
sure.
a little bit.
Yeah. At a nightclub in Thousand Oaks, there was a shooting. It was November 7th, I think, I want to say, and about 13 people were killed there. So
Last year, yeah.
That was last year. Yes, last November. But so many before that, so many since then, right? And the mass shooting piece, and we'll run out of time before we can talk about all the gun violence pieces, but the mass shooting piece is what's elevating the conversation about gun violence. Everyday gun violence has been happening for years and years and years in communities of color and all sorts of other places. And so suicide is the number one outcome of gun violence. 60% of gun violence is suicide. Another 23% is domestic violence. 1% is mass shooting, but it's what's bringing the conversation to the next level. So after the Thousand Oaks shooting, which is very close to our headquarters, it's very close to our founder's home, he sort of said, if not us, who? If not now, when?
I mean, he had a personal conversation with his wife.
He did.
Who was afraid to let their child go outside for a little
That's
while.
right. And she said, I'm not taking them to school today. Someone needs to do something, right? Okay. And so I think that's sort of the moment where Blake kind of asked himself that question. Now, he came to the organization and said, look, we're going down this other path. I think we need to lean into this, to our role in potentially ending gun violence. And we need to learn as much as we can about it. We need to do it fast. Because urgency is definitely a component of all of this. So we did that. I talked to probably 40 nonprofit organizations over the course of just a couple of months. We wanted to use the right language. We wanted to understand what the issues were. In that first phone call with an organization, right, I was expecting to hear all this stuff about mass shootings and how they have gotten so big. And we talked about, suicide for 45 minutes. And on the next call, we talked about domestic violence. And so we were getting educated as fast as we could about this issue, and decided to make a $5 million commitment to ending gun violence, which would be invested in organizations that are working toward that in a variety of different ways. It was tricky because pretty much every issue right now is political, but this one particularly is, right? And so we didn't necessarily want to get into the politics of the Second Amendment and all these other things, right? But we did say, look, 100 people a day are dying in the United States because of gun violence, and that shouldn't be okay with any of us, no matter your political disposition. We did take a stand on the fact that we thought universal background checks, along with approximately 90% of the country, should be a law. So that's a background check, not at the state level, but at the federal level. And that we felt like that was an important legislative thing that should happen, right? And so that passed the House in February. We invited our TOMS consumers to fill out a postcard to urge Congress to pass universal background checks. I didn't think hardly anyone would do it. 730,000 people signed a postcard.
What time period?
Time frame was about 3 weeks.
That's all.
Yeah, and I think it shows that people actually, a little bit to your cynicism point, it shows that people, yes, they want to feel good about what they're doing, and I think that's okay. I'm actually okay with that. But they also want to engage in some of these issues. Now, they want you to make it simple for them, and they want you to find smart ways to do it, and they want you to do some of the heavy lifting for them, and I'm okay with that too. But to have 730,000 people say, yes, we believe in this, and we're behind you, and we want you to go tell the House of Representatives to do this, that was pretty powerful.
We have a question from Kelly that goes right to the next question I was going to ask you, but I'd rather take it from Kelly.
Yeah.
Kelly asks, do any of your employees disagree with the company's stances on background checks and other policies? How do you handle that?
So we certainly want to have a welcoming environment at TOMS for all employees. We are very careful to ensure that everyone is invited to the conversation, and that we did have a few employees that were like, ooh, hold on a minute, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this. I came here to give shoes. Now we're going into this other area. I'm a gun owner, right? There were sort of all those conversations. And so we just created space for people to have those conversations internally to ensure that they understood what our stance was, why we were choosing that stance, and to provide them with opportunities to talk to our giving partners, to learn about what we were investing in, to understand what that issue was in a little deeper way.
But was it seen that they needed to be educated?
That I think collectively we were getting educated about this issue.
But I'm asking a different question. Was the impression that they needed to be brought over to your
No.
your side of the issue?
Yeah, no, not at all. In fact, we offer the opportunity for people just to get together over lunch and kind of just talk about the issue, no matter what side of it that you might be on. And we try to stay away from that. The only place that we did take what you would consider a political stance is around the passing universal background checks.
And I know that you've had 730,000 postcards sent. Did you have any blowback at all from customers?
Yes, we did. So we, in the 100% total, about 75% of that was very positive. People were, this is great, we're behind you, TOMS, thanks for taking this on. And in the 25%, there was about half of them that sort of was like, stay in your lane, make shoes, don't get involved in politics. And the other half of that 25% that was just sheer hatred toward anyone that might have a different opinion than everyone should have a gun.
May I interrupt to say,
Yeah.
Hannah is sending in a question on this very topic. From a brand perspective, were you worried about choosing a polarizing issue and potentially alienating consumers? So you've just said that
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah.
Did you think this through ahead of time?
We were worried, we were aware, but we felt as though this was the right thing to do, and we believed in the decision we were making, so we were okay with it. And it was a big conversation internally, as you can imagine. We don't want anyone to feel as though they're not welcome to be a TOMS supporter, but we did feel like this particular issue in this particular instance was one that we were okay taking a stronger stand on. And I think we're seeing companies do that more and more.
With the shoe model, people buy a shoe, they know there's going to be a shoe showing up somewhere. With the gun issue,
Yeah.
what's the interaction? What's the transaction?
Yeah. So we're trying to find simple ways to tell those stories and share them with people. What are we investing in? Who are the nonprofit partners? Where are the dollars going? How many dollars are we giving? Toward what? So for example, we took a group of our employees to Chicago. We do giving trips, which is a really special thing that if you're a TOMS employee, you get to do every 2 years. You can go and see our giving in action. So you might go to Peru and give shoes at a local school, and it's a 4 or 5 day experience. We did this in Chicago with some of our ending gun violence investments. So we went around to the organizations that we've invested in, and we saw firsthand what those dollars were doing in those local communities. And that was a great way for our employees to see it, Now we're going to take those stories, bring them to life, and share that with our customers.
So 1-for-1 was much imitated. Do you think this model is also going to be imitated? Much more complicated.
It's a little more complicated. We believe in the consumer. We think they're savvy, and we think that they're ready to take on something a little more complicated. We're trying to keep it simple, however. We're still working through what is that messaging, and we're releasing an impact report that will sort of share kind of what that history's been and where we're headed. And so that'll be a way for people to kind of really get grounded in their impact over so many years and where we're headed from here, and continue to work on how do we tell that story in a simple way.
Amy Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.